Hello, so this video we're looking at solving inequalities again, but this time where you've got a quadratic, and what I mean by that is where you've got a square part to your inequality, okay, which we have to think about it a little bit carefully. So we'll get straight into it and then you can try two questions yourself afterwards. So again, we want to solve this inequality showing your answer on a number line, which is stuff that we've been doing previously. Let's dive straight into it. We know that if you solve something, you want to get the missing thing, which is x in this case, on its own, isolated. I've got x squared take away 7. Let's begin by adding on 7 to both sides to begin with. This is our balance method that hopefully we're getting really familiar with. And these two here, they cancel, which is good. And on the left-hand side, we're left with now x squared being less than 42 add 7, which is equal to 49. So good. I've got x squared. X has got to be on its own. Well, the opposite of squaring is to square root. And I've got to do that to both sides because then the squares will cancel with the roots and I'm left with x. And importantly, being less than, if you square root 49, and this is very, very important now, you actually get two answers because, and the answers are going to be 7 and minus 7 because 7 squared is 49 and minus 7 squared is also 49. So you get two different answers. But we've got to be really, really careful in the way that we write this. Okay? So before we kind of get into the answer, the original question again was x squared minus 7 is less than 42, and then we got it down to x squared being less than 49. Okay, so I've just written this part here over here again, because this is going to help us think about this part here, which is really, really important. Well, and let's get rid of that sign so we don't get confused. Or we can leave it in there, actually, that makes no difference. If x squared is less than 49, well, does x have to be bigger than or less than 7? X has actually got to be less than 7. And let's check that, okay? This is really important. Right, if we check this and we use a value less than 7, like 6, okay, x being equal to 6, that means less than 7. What is 6 squared? Is 6 squared less than 49? Yes, it is, because 6 squared is 36, which is less than 49. So your values must be less than 7. If I did something bigger, like x being equal to 8, I would have got 8 squared, which clearly is not less than 49, because 8 squared is 64, so it breaks down there. So I've got to have my x values being less than 7 to satisfy this part. And then similarly, because I still got to deal with this minus 7, I've got to have values of x, in this case, that are going to be greater than minus 7. And again, to understand that, let's check this using some examples. What is about a value of x bigger than minus 7? Let's use something like 0, because 0 is bigger than minus 7. Well, if I put that into my inequality, is 0 squared less than 49? Well, 0 is less than 49. Good, that makes sense. If I used a value that wasn't bigger than minus 7, so something like x being equal to minus 8, well, let's use minus 10 to make our numbers a little bit easier. Well, minus 10 squared would give me 100, which clearly is not less than 49. So the inequality breaks down. So my x values must be bigger than minus 7. Okay, but I'm not quite finished here. I can write this in a specific way. So I'm saying x is less than 7, bigger than minus 7. I can write this like this. So x must be greater than minus 7. So this means x is bigger than minus 7, so greater than minus 7. But x must be less than 7. Okay, this is saying x is between minus 7 and 7. And that is actually how I write my answer in this kind of question. This is a much trickier question. You've got to really think about it. Otherwise, it does go a bit wrong. So that's me solving the inequality and show my answer on a number line, which now this bit should be okay, hopefully. So number line, we should be getting pretty confident with this. So number line, let's go and draw it over here. So it's got to be bigger than minus 7, but not including minus 7, and it must be less than 7, but not including your number 7. So the integer values here that are going to work. So if we were to list the integer, the whole number values for this question that work, it's going to be from not minus 7, but minus 6, minus 5, minus 4, all the way up 2, minus 3, minus 2, minus 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6. But you would not include 7. Okay? And if we really want to, we can check this back into the original inequality. Let's choose, I don't know, x being equal to 0 would be in here. Is 0 squared minus 7 less than 42? Yes, it is. So any of these values here, okay, will satisfy your inequality. X squared minus 7 is less than 42. So that's my answer. Solved. Good. That's it on the number line. Good. And that is me listing the values that work, that satisfy that inequality, which wasn't asked for, but it's good to think about what that really means. So pause video, give those two there a go, and really think about how you write your answers at the end, because that is important. So the question again is saying, solve these inequalities, and again, you've got to show your answers on a number line. The first part is kind of what you think you would do. Again, solve means you want to get the x part on its own. Isolated, I've got 3x squared minus 17. Let's begin by adding on 17 to begin with to both sides, because then what's going to happen here? These two here, they cancel, which is good. And you're left with, on your left-hand side of the inequality, 3x squared being less than 31 add 17 is equal to 48. Okay, and then to get x squared on its own, I've got 3 times x squared. Let's divide through by 3 and divide through by 3. And that is useful because these 3's here, they're going to cancel. And I'm left with x squared being less than 48 divided by 3 is equal to 16, which is good. It's a square number, so I can now go and easily square root both sides. And again, you will get two answers here of x, okay? Either 4 or minus 4, but how we write this is really, really important. And actually, right, it's going to be, x is going to have to be greater than minus 4, and x is going to have to be less than 4. And let's check that before I write my final answer. Let's check both of these. Okay, let's check these. If x is bigger than minus 4, let's just say, I don't know, x being equal to 0, because 0 is bigger than minus 4, is 0 squared less than 16? Well, yes, it is, because 0 squared is just 0, which is clearly less than 16. So this one here, it makes sense. And similarly, if x is less than 4, again, let's just use the number, I don't know, 1 in this case, because that's less than 4, is 1 squared less than 16? Well, 1 squared clearly is less than 16, so it makes sense. So this is the way that I write my inequality signs, but then just to finish up, I can write it as a single inequality because it is between the two values. I can write it as x being greater than minus 4. That means bigger than minus 4. X is bigger than minus 4, but it must be less than 4. So between minus 4 and 4. Okay, if you wrote it the other way around, so if you wrote it 4 and minus 4, well, you could think, does that make sense? It doesn't, because if it's going to be between 4 and minus 4, you've got to kind of go in chronological order, right? 4 is not less than the minus 4. It doesn't make sense. So you've got to have that negative on this side. Okay, so minus 4 and 4. That is my answer for this one. And let's highlight it. There we go. And to show your answer on a number line, this bit is now should be hopefully okay. We're saying x has got to be greater than minus 4, which is down here, but it's got to be less than 4, which is over here, and it's between these two values. And again, if you want to list the integer values here that satisfy this inequality, well, bigger than minus 4, you're going to start from minus 3, and then minus 2, minus 1, 0, up to 1, 2, and then 3. So any of these values here, any of these integers, these whole numbers, will satisfy your original inequality. And you can check one. If x is 0, 3 times 0 squared, which is going to be 0, so you're left with minus 17, which is less than 31. Any values of x outside of this range of values will not satisfy the original inequality. Okay, good. So that's the first one. The second one, let's give it a go. So again, let's begin here by adding on 13 to both sides. That's a good place to start there. And that's good, because then what happens here? These 13s, they're going to cancel. And we're left with, on the left-hand side, 5x squared being less than equal to 32 over 13 is equal to 45. That's divided through both sides by 5, which is good because then these 5s here, they cancel, which is good because I'm now left over here with x squared being less than equal to 45 divided by 5 is 9, which again is good because it's a square number. And well, what squared is equal to 9? Well, that's root both sides because then we get either 3 or minus 3. But again, let's think carefully about our signs. And you're probably spotting the pattern now. It's going to have to be over here, x being bigger than minus 3 and x being less than 3. And let's again check that this makes sense. Let's do a sanity check in green. Let's do a sanity check and make sure that this makes sense. If x is bigger than minus 3, so let's choose a number bigger than minus 3, like 0, because 0 is bigger than minus 3, is 0 squared less than or equal to 9? Is 0 squared less than or equal to 9? Well, yes it is, because 0 squared is just 0, and that is less than or equal to 9. It makes sense, good. If x is less than 3, like 1, again, so we're just choosing, you could choose any value here, okay, it doesn't matter. If x was 1, is 1 squared less than or equal to 9? Yes it is, because 1 is less than or equal to 9. So good. If I had my signs the other way around, it would not make sense. And then my answer, because it is between these two values here, I can write as a single inequality. So x must be bigger than, greater than negative 3, but it must be less than 3. And that is my answer for this one over here. And again, on a number line, that's the final part now. Let's go and do that. So number line down here. And I really should be writing x down here. I should be writing x over here. It's got to be greater than... Oh, I missed out something very important there. It's greater than or equal... Sorry, less than or equal to here. So it's got to be less than or equal to, less than or equal to. So if you've got that bit below it, you've got to make sure you write it in the inequality. You've got to write it in the inequality. Okay, and then let's just go and fill in our numbers. So it's got to be minus 3 down here and 3 over here. It's going to be bigger than or equal to, so we get a filled in circle, and less than or equal to 3, so filled in circle. And we go and join those two together. And that's it. And if you want to show your integer values that satisfy this inequality, this time you would include your bottom two numbers, so minus 3 and up to minus 1 up to 2, and then you do include 3 because it is less than equal to minus 3, sorry, bigger than equal to minus 3, less than equal to 3. So these integer values here are satisfied by the inequality. Okay, that is it. Hopefully that was useful. A little bit trickier, but you know, it's good to have a go at these kind of questions. Okay, thank you.